Right, my topic is about labor discrimination and employability, which is a very useful topic, especially for a country like Chile, because as you may know, Chile is one of the countries that has the most private pension system on the world. It's absolutely private. So the problem related with the elderly people getting retired after 65 years old is becoming a big problem for all of us, especially because the savings of money for the retirement is quite low in comparison to other countries, because actually we don't have any public help for the people retired. So it's becoming a big problem, all of related to the labor force about elderly people. In my young concern, I'm really concerned about the response of the labor demand in terms of the employability increases of the elderly workforce. Why? Because it has been demonstrated in several research that that sensibility of the labor demand in terms of the employability increases is not quite high regarding or in comparison, for example, to young people or even another segments. Well, we have a couple of theories explaining that, but we're going to go step by step. Well, as I said before, I'm really concerned about the impact of the employability increases into the labor market opportunities for elderly people, and in a specific way, in order to try to support or give some ideas for making public policies in terms of the labor demand stimulation for this specific segment of people. Everything under the framework of the labor discrimination. Labor discrimination, as you may know, is becoming a big topic in about several segments of workforce, especially in general very related to gender, age, race, and another segment traditionally discriminated by the labor market, right? Occupational discrimination, is very similar to access, but in this case is related to some specific positions, some specific labor market, in which we have some discriminative practices in order to avoid the entering of another segment, another workforce into the predominant groups by taking control on a specific position or labor markets. And finally, human capital improvements, discrimination, in which the typical problem related to give opportunities of professional development for a specific segment of workers as well. Especially again in the case of women, which is the most traditional discrimination study. And in this case, in particular, is very relevant for the elderly workforce as well, because it has been noted with a strongly point of view, the opportunities for getting more professional development in the case of elderly workforce has been a big deal in the last decades, especially because the companies are not investing quite a lot in professional development for elderly workforce. So we have a complete landscape of discrimination, which is very focused in my study on the elderly workforce. About the theories, well, the most typical theories are actually two, which is firstly the taste for discrimination, which is the more traditional theory explaining the behavioral or the behaviors of discrimination, and statistical discrimination, which is a variant of this theory, is an alternative explanation, putting the focus on how the employers try to missing information about some segment of workers by ascribing them some groups characteristics, right? There is a third theory related to labor discrimination, which is a very specific explanation about behaviors of specific dominant groups into some occupational labor force or a specific kind of positions in which the dominant group try to avoid the entering of another workforce or other employees in order to remain the control of the position. In that way, they try to avoid to compete with another workers. They are more or less the theories that they are explaining the labor discrimination, which are very important for my study because depends on the reality of these theories. We're going to get the explanatory variables in order to test the experiment that I want to run, right? All right, well, this is just for explaining what is the effect of the taste for discrimination in the case of salaries. In general, we can say that the only way to overtake the taste for discrimination is through reducing the salary that the employers are willing to pay for the people coming from segments that they don't want to work with. This is an economical approach about how to solve the taste for discrimination. This is a very important conceptual map because in my study, in particular, I'm going to be really focused on the labor demand side, right? It's true that has been investigated a lot of several variables related with the labor supply side as well, especially the willingness of the workers for getting retired, an early age, and so on. But in this specific case, I'm gonna be focused on labor demand side, especially because the relationship about the theories that I'm trying to get involved into the final explanation of the labor discrimination for elderly workers. If you think that, for example, that, well, in this case, we have three latent variables. In the case of structural equation, if you want to think on that sense, they are constructs. They are depending absolutely about the measure of the labor demand variables. In the case of preferences, we're talking about actually for the case for discrimination, and in the case of group characterization and candidate information, especially when the information is missing, we are focused on statistical discrimination theory. The same in the case of the competition aversion, which is the main explanation for the occupational segregation theory. Right, so if we take into consideration these four and other variables coming from the labor demand side, we can easily try to explain or construct the latent variables explaining the final results related with employability, the impact of the employability increase into the labor market opportunities. About the outcomes for people over 50 years old, the most important investigated has been, well, hiring decisions, promotion decisions, and salary increases, which are the typical outcomes related with the labor market opportunities. Right? Well, we have several findings, so we are not going to go deeper on that. But in general, we can say that the discrimination behavior has been demonstrated in almost all of the Western countries in about the elderly people, right? several explanations, and in general we can say that employability increase has a good or positive impact on labor market opportunities for this segment of population. But in general, this kind of impact is really mediated by several another variables, especially initial educational background. All right, when you have an educational background, a lower educational background, the possibility for getting best opportunities into the labor market over 50 years old is completely reduced in comparison with people having a higher educational background. Right? In terms of the experimental design, well, I want to do something similar, not exactly the same, but something similar to the studies of Bertrand and Moulay-Nahan in 2024, which is related to use resumes in order to simulate selection or recruiting processes, right? In my design, which is a very preliminary design, because this is the first time that I'm thinking of that way, I would like to use professional recruiters in order to test how the employability level is impacting the decisions made about hiring and promotion, right? So typically what we're going to do is, well, to separate the professional recruiters into control group and experimental group. And in the case of control group, they are going to receive blind resumes. It means resumes without any information about age and about work-life time. You know? I mean, so how long time the people have been working into the labor market, right? So this is the concept of blind resumes. In the case of experimental group, they are going to receive information about the age. The resumes are going to be more or less quite the same in both of them cases, and the only difference is going to be related with the missing information about age and time into the labor market. In both of them cases, they are not going to receive information about names of the candidates, because the effect of name about thoughts about race are original of the people, and in both of these cases they are not going to receive information about gender. So in that way we're going to control another typical variables of discrimination, like gender and race, for example. So we're going to be focused just in the case of employability level, right? Well, this is more or less the design. The idea is to put together 30 or 40 professional recruiters making decisions about hiring just by taking into consideration information about educational background and work experience, without any information in the case of experimental group about age and time working into the labor market. So in general, we're going to test the impact of employability level about the decisions for hiring elderly people, and keeping under control another traditional variables of discrimination into the labor market. Thank you very much.